Welcome everyone. My name's Jen Sharon, NHIA's Chief Operating Officer and your moderator for today's second education session in NHIA's summer series, Project Management Pearls, Impact on Revenue. This education session is part of NHIA's summer series being held each Wednesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern through July. The summer series is focused on providing you with free education and CEs that you would have enjoyed at our annual conference. Make sure to watch Infusion Express for upcoming sessions and the registration links, or visit NHIA's new website, click Learn, CE Education, and Summer Series to register for future events or catch up on education you missed. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders. The presentation is available for download from the handout section of the navigation pane. The webinar will be recorded and a link to the recording will be emailed to you following the conclusion of the webinar. The webinar will also be on NHIA's website within the next 24 hours. In order to receive CE, please follow the link in the follow-up email and complete a short quiz. Following the presentation, we'll have time to answer questions. Please submit your questions via the question tab in the navigation pane at any time during the presentation. All right, now on to our main event. Our speaker today is Alyssa Moy, Director of Adoption and Integration. Alyssa's bio can be found in the handout section of the navigation pane, but I'll hand it right over to you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Jennifer. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the NHIA organization and to all of you for attending this session virtually. Since we're not in person, I understand it can be difficult to keep focused. So I intend to try to make our time today engaging. And if you listen really well, you'll leave here with some exciting skills that you can apply immediately. So we're here today to learn about how you can leverage project management pearls of wisdom in your everyday life to glean real positive results for your organization that will inevitably help your bottom line. So let's find out how. I guarantee that at some point in the last few months, you have started an activity, then became distracted a short while later because an issue arose or a higher priority problem needed to be addressed. If we were together in person, I'm sure we'd be seeing lots of head nodding right now, but it would be unrealistic to say that every single task or problem that comes your way needs to be resolved. It's true that there may be other higher priority issues that will require your attention and arise at inopportune times. The problem that we'll be solving today is not to teach you ways to ensure your to-do list remains completed, but instead I'm here today to share with you methods that you can use to ensure your highest priority projects are getting addressed, monitored, and synced to completion on scope, on schedule, and on budget. Utilizing project management methodology helps to ensure that projects stay on track. Just look at the statistic on how only 2.5% of companies successfully complete 100% of their projects. That's outstanding in a bad way. Just think about all of the projects that were initiated, the resources who spent numerous hours on planning and execution, only to be abandoned, which means hundreds or even thousands of dollars were misappropriated and lost. But don't be intimidated by project management. A little piece of trivia that may come in handy in future Trivial Pursuit games is that formal project management methodologies arose all the way back in the 1950s and were first widely used and mandated within the Department of Defense aerospace projects, since virtually all of their projects were being overrun with substantial costs. If it wasn't for the DoD adopting and proving out this methodology, we may not be talking about it today. However, you don't need to be a DoD aerospace engineer to understand and use project management methods in your daily life. Project management is simply a set of methodologies that enable you to get things done on time and on budget. Just like an electrician needs their tool belt, you'll find these skills will become part of your own tool belt. Managing costs is the main reason project management came into fruition. However, there are many other benefits of utilizing project management, such as improving the chances of achieving your desired results, improving the productivity and quality of work within your teams, providing structure, and breaks down a large problem into smaller achievable tasks to reach the overall goal. It also reduces scope creep. So what's scope creep? Remember the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? Well, scope creep is the same message. Inevitably, a project or task will try to extend beyond what was originally intended. For example, let's say you want to paint your living room walls. Many of us are cooped up nowadays, so it's a relevant problem that we may be facing. As you start to paint, you realize your baseboards also need a new coat of paint. Then you realize your ceiling looks dull compared to the fresh new coat of paint on the walls, and you decide to paint the ceiling. This results in more time needed and additional costs in terms of extra buckets of paint, paint brushes, and ancillary items, as well as time to complete the project. These are the pitfalls within those projects, but good project management will help you to keep focused on what is truly the priority. Project management also is big on measuring progress frequently. Many of you may recognize this quote from Peter Drucker, who's well known as a founder of modern management, where he says, "You can't manage what you don't measure." Even in small projects, measuring progress is key. Think about the age-old woe of trying to lose weight. If you don't weigh yourself on a scale, how will you know if your diet and exercise methods are working? Within any initiative or task, you need to identify how you will measure your progress. Otherwise, you won't know which direction you're heading, and time is money. Today, we will be reviewing 2 case studies from my own professional experience, as well as some tips and tricks to improve your own organizational and self-management skills. You don't need to be a certified project manager in order to benefit from good project management skills. Let me show you how. The game plan is a high-level process you can use whenever you have a problem that you need to solve or a project you'd like to tackle. The game plan was used in the following 2 case studies that we'll be reviewing today in a plan that you can use in your own projects. The first step is to assess the situation. What are the symptoms you're noticing? What red flags do you see? The next step is to determine resources. Who do you have available to help you work on the problem? Utilize people who are subject matter experts in the matter at hand. Leverage folks from your own team. Use a RACI chart, which is available in the references section, to list out which tasks will need to be involved with the project and which roles resources will play. This will help prevent anyone from stepping on each other's toes and will reduce duplicative work. The next step is to document your goals. Well, this step may seem pretty obvious, but many people tend to skip it, which results in scope creep later on. Keeping your focus on what you want to achieve will help you to reach the top of that mountain. Next up is the fun part, performing a discovery. At this point, you know what the symptoms are, you have people who can help you with the problem, and you know what end state you want to be in. This step is all about observation, observing people and observing work. Start from where the symptoms begin, which is usually at the end of the process, and then work backwards. Sometimes this may take a few minutes, an hour, or even multiple days to complete. The next step is to identify the root causes. This should be done after the discovery phase is complete. If you find that you haven't identified the root cause yet, then go back to perform additional discovery and observation. The next 2 steps, assigning solutions and prioritizing solutions, are really about creating a plan and analyzing the solutions to determine what's going to be the biggest bang for your buck. Lastly, identify someone to lead the project. This doesn't need to be someone formally trained in project management and can be you or a trusted team member on your team who can follow a plan and keep focused. The toolkit in review today includes 5 key techniques based on industry best practices to use with different problems. Links to the templates for each of these are available on the references page, which is also available to you in the handout section. The fishbone diagram should be used when you have a problem, but you don't know what or where the root cause is. The diagram itself looks like a fishbone, where you start from the problem and then work backwards. The action plan, otherwise known in the project management world as a work breakdown structure, is highly versatile. You can use this plan whenever you have more than just a couple tasks that will be too difficult for you to try to remember on your own. Creating the action plan is one of the most valuable investments you can spend your time on with any project. This plan will also inform you when you will need to follow up with resources to ensure tasks are getting completed. Having a documented action plan is useful when you have future similar projects where you don't have to reinvent the wheel and can leverage the lessons learned from prior projects. And you don't have to rely on people's memory on what worked well, what didn't, or what prior action plans look like. The RACI chart, which I referenced earlier, is a tool that helps to define roles and responsibilities. The activities are usually listed on the left side of a document, and the names of resources, or you can use names of roles if you don't know individuals' names, are listed at the top. Then you would propagate the initials of R, A, C, or I, which are populated within the chart to indicate what role the person will play within each task. The roles represent who is R for responsible, meaning who is responsible for actually performing the work. A for accountable. This is someone not necessarily responsible for doing the work, but is responsible to ensure the work gets done. C for consulted. This is someone who may have expertise or advice on how to accomplish a task, but is not someone who will actually perform the work. Or I for informed. This is someone who needs to be informed of the progress or status, like a manager. The benefit versus effort model helps you to identify your quick wins, which are the solutions that will give you the highest benefits for the lowest amount of effort. Then will help you to prioritize any other solutions based on highest to lowest value. Lastly, the 1 minute to do method is usually the most exciting set of tools whenever I share this methodology to others. And I think ending with this topic will help to ignite your desire to implement what you've learned here today. So let's look at how to apply these tools within some real life examples in the infusion industry. The first of the two case studies we will review today is a story of a struggling pharmacy that had more than 50 employees and spanned over 4 different departments and disciplines and had numerous red flags. The red flags consisted of exceptionally high overtime hours in several departments, high delivery costs, and low customer satisfaction. Luckily, there were other pharmacies in the area comparable in size that were performing very well, so it was clear something was wrong here. The project took close to 6 months to complete from start to finish and proved some clear results in terms of cutting overtime in half and improving delivery costs by double digits. This should look similar to you, as it's a variation of the game plan we reviewed on slide 4. We started out reviewing the symptoms from the pharmacy, defined our goals, what we wanted to achieve through addressing the issues, reviewed if the project was feasible based on timing and resources available, which it was, then moved on to perform on-site discovery. The results from the on-site discovery were analyzed and priorities determined. The action plan was then created, and the team moved on to the execution phase of the project with monitoring the action plan weekly, reviewing metrics frequently, and redirecting the path as needed. Next up was a scope review and the pain point symptoms. The pharmacy's pain points included, again, overtime hours that were 8 times higher than normal, delivery costs over budget, and lost referrals on a daily basis. As you can imagine, this was very concerning for area leadership. We met with the area leadership and the management within the pharmacy to review what prior solutions were attempted in the past to address the problem. Clearly, the problems impacted the bottom line for this pharmacy, and to stay afloat, something needed to be done. Getting alignment from area leadership was key to getting this project off the ground. Once local leadership was aligned on the impacts of the problems, the goals became clear. Memorialization. This is just a fancy way of saying to please document what was agreed upon. Type it up, send it to everyone involved, or if you're not in front of your computer, just write it on the back of the napkin and text it to everyone, but please document. And yes, I did document the 10 identified goals from the struggling pharmacy and included this goal listing every status update, every PowerPoint deck, and every team meeting. And guess what? What I thought was agreed upon as a group actually proved to have some gaps when everyone saw it in a list. So remind people of what's important and make sure that you document what everyone agreed upon. The next step was the feasibility review and resource identification. So who were the lucky people tagged to solve this problem? I knew we needed to determine what skills were crucial, which was more important than who I wanted to work with. The skills that were most useful in these types of problems include strong organizational skills, the ability to ask direct questions, a strong understanding of the operational workflow, and expertise with implementing change. Creating a RACI chart, and a helpful hint here is that the link to an example template can be found in the references page, helps to memorialize the roles, responsibilities, and sets clear expectations for all involved. Next, I drew up a schedule and assigned team members to perform the on-site observations for a week. The discovery process is simply observation. Just like any good science project, you'll want your team members to document what they see. At the end of the day, they should draw up their conclusions and rinse, wash, and repeat on the next day. 3 other main tasks that were completed during this discovery week included getting to the root of the problem by utilizing the 5 why method. The 5 why method originates from Six Sigma methodologies and is very simple. The theory is that by the time you ask why 5 times, you inevitably get to the root of the problem. So try it out. This is also a fun technique to practice on your family members. Perform daily debriefs with those performing the discovery work. Then summarize the daily results, and then summarize all the results at the end of the discovery period. For this pharmacy, it took only 2 days to identify the root of the problem and move towards the next phase. However, we didn't end discovery after day 2 and continued on for the rest of the week. A benefit versus effort analysis is a fun exercise to do, I promise. It always amazes me how we can take something as chaotic and variable as human activity and be able to transform it into a structured numerical model. Listen, I wasn't the best student in math class, so don't let this graph intimidate you. You don't need to be a math whiz to learn how to graph your data into a B&E model. All it is simply a way to graph which efforts are high in benefit to you and low in effort for the team to produce. Items in the green section are your low-hanging fruit, so pluck them off the tree. If you don't get time to address the items towards the lower right, no problem, as you can rest easy that you've tackled the highest benefit solutions first. What we did with the pharmacy's results was to ask each team member to rate each problem on a scale of 1 to 10 in the following 5 areas to come up with an average. We asked them to perform this task individually so that team members wouldn't be swayed by other team members' results. The 5 areas included the importance to the customer, cost to implement, likelihood of success, cost reduction, and positive impact on other processes. Then, all of the team members' results were combined to create a finalized list and prioritized into categories sorted by most valuable to lowest. The quick win bucket was called JDIs, short for just do it. These were the no-brainers: high benefit, no effort. Next up was what we called box 1, which had high benefit, low effort, another type of quick win. Box 2 had, again, high benefit, but medium effort, so it took a little bit more time and effort to implement those solutions. Or maybe we assumed that the change management piece would be a little bit harder and people would be a little less likely to adopt what we were implementing. And then the third box was medium benefit and medium effort. So you get the idea. You can create your own buckets or use the JDI plus box 3 method I just described. It will work any way you slice it. I've also provided a link to a template you can use for your own B&E analysis, which can be found in the references section of this presentation. Next, I used the results from the B&E analysis to determine what the subtasks were to complete each solution. I recommend you brainstorm as a team to make sure you don't miss a task, instead of doing this individually and on your own. Break down the solution into a how-to to get it done. Remember back in elementary school when you had to write out instructions on how to make a peanut butter sandwich? So tasks should translate to instructions like that on how to implement a solution. Tasks should be documented as steps within the action plan. For example, one of the proposed solutions for this pharmacy was to create a checklist to ensure all elements were completed before someone took the next step in the process. Some tasks that were included to complete the solution were drafting the checklist, number 2, reviewing the checklist with the pharmacy staff, number 3, incorporating changes to the checklist based off of pharmacy's feedback, number 4, formalizing it into a PDF document, number 5, publishing the checklist to the pharmacy staff, and lastly, to schedule a follow-up call with the pharmacy staff 1 week after implementation to discuss any issues or to make any improvements to the checklist. And a link to this Excel action plan template is also available on the references page. Remember Peter Drucker's quote, "You can't manage what you don't measure." Just like you need to use a scale to monitor weight, you need to use metrics to monitor your project's progress. This should be easy since you've defined what your goals were at the beginning of the project. Before we started implementing solutions within our pharmacy, our team identified what our baseline values were. Baseline values are simply the initial point of the metrics from where you're starting. Then we identified what does good look like to us. Since our goals were to reduce overtime by 90%, that was one of our clear and obvious metrics. Another metric was to reduce our cost per delivery to at or below our budgeted amount. Obviously, the metrics you will use will be custom to your problem, but again, you get the idea. What helps with metrics and monitoring is to review progress with your team frequently and be transparent with all involved with the results. Don't keep it to yourself. Is the scale moving? No? Then what needs to be done differently? We encountered lack of progress within our pharmacy at times and had to try several different approaches to realize some green shoots. So, what do we see with a struggling pharmacy after implementing various solutions? What worked well for the location was to be able to decrease our use of courier services, which improved overall cost of delivery by 12%. Working ahead and mandating cessation of overtime reduced overtime costs by 50%. Enrollment in a credit card program for patient out-of-pocket costs improved patient revenue by 20%. Increased training and focus on higher priority items for staff and increased accuracy by 6% were realized. And then we reduced and streamlined communication by reducing email and Skype noise by adopting the use of our standardized communication tool. There were a couple of things that didn't work as well as we thought or that didn't reach the overall goal. One of them was we had moved the pharmacy staff off of a paper-based refill log to an automated refill log, which did help with standardization with other locations, but we did not see a bump in productivity with the staff. And secondly, even though there were significant improvements in cost savings and overtime, we did not meet the overtime goal set forth by leadership to reduce by 90%. However, we were able to reduce it by 50%. This summary, the schedule summary, is a pretty nice view to have for your team if you have time to create it. And it will help to show you which milestones you have on the schedule that need to be completed in order to start realizing value. This will help prevent scope creep because you're publishing your commitment to these dates and your team will be held accountable to these dates by others. And that's okay. Stick to your guns and remain focused on your priorities. Establishing a schedule will be a valuable tool for your team to stick to as well. All right, moving on to the second case study. I feel like we're discussing chapter 2 of a Nancy Drew novel here, but the case of the sluggish turnaround time. The last of the 2 case studies we're reviewing today is a story of an intake team that was producing high effort and desire, but lacked in value. Effort doesn't always equal results. The focus was just on one team within one location. Symptoms presented as multiple customer complaints from our referral sources and patients alike. The straw that broke the camel's back was really the loss of a significant referral source that prompted the start of this story. So something needed to be done to accelerate the team's response time and win this referral source back. The project took up to 4 months to see full results, with improvement noticed in month 2. And luckily, the story has a happy ending. Again, the methodology that we used here is a similar variation on the game plan reviewed on slide 4. We started out reviewing the symptoms from the intake team, defined our goals, defined what we wanted to achieve through addressing the issues, reviewed if the project was feasible based on timing and resources available, which it was, and then moved on to perform the site discovery. Results from the discovery were then analyzed and priorities were determined. The action plan was created and the team moved into the execution phase of the project by monitoring the action plan weekly, reviewing metrics frequently, and redirected the path as needed. Next up, again, was a scope review of the pain point symptoms. This intake team's pain points included slow response time from several referral sources that caused irritation. And as you can imagine, this was very concerning for area leadership. We had met with area leadership and the management within the intake team to review what prior solutions were attempted in the past to address the problem. So clearly the problems impacted the ability for this location to grow, and something needed to be done. Getting alignment from area leadership, again, was key to getting this project off the ground. Once local leadership was aligned on the impacts from the problems, the goals became clear. Again, memorializing the goals was imperative to the success of the project. The team documented 2 main goals, including reduction in turnaround time by 90% and improved accuracy rate by 9% based on our company's standard expectations for these metrics. Similar with the first case, the skills that are most useful in this type of situation included a strong understanding of the affected process, which in this case was intake, prior intake management experience, and prior experience turning around the performance of teams. Next, I drew up a schedule and assigned team members to perform the on-site observations for a week. The team went on site for discovery for a duration of a week and decided they needed to be on site for several months to help co-manage the team. A schedule was developed to rotate on-site observations so that team members weren't stuck traveling 100% of the time. The team members performing the discovery sat with the intake staff in their cubes day after day to identify where the problems were that they saw. At the end of the day, they drew up their conclusions and rinsed, washed, and repeated for the next day. 4 other main tasks that were completed during the discovery period included getting to the root of the problem by utilizing the 5 why method, perform daily debriefs with those performing the discovery work, summarize the daily results, and implemented incremental solutions each week. Even though this case study involved a smaller number of resources from the prior case study, it took the team longer to identify and pinpoint the location of the root causes. Next, I used the results from the on-site discovery process to determine what the subtasks were to complete each solution. To remember the peanut butter sandwich example, tasks should translate to instructions on how to implement a solution. Tasks should be documented as steps. For example, a proposed solution with the intake team was to change around their lunch and break schedules. We found that several high producers were taking lunch and breaks together during the busiest referral times of the day. Subtasks included drafting a new schedule to ensure no more than one person was out at any given time, socialize the schedule with the affected staff, revised based on their concerns, posted the schedule, implemented an effective date, and monitored turnaround time to see if the change positively impacted operations, which it did. And a link to this Excel example template is available on the references page. Again, I'm going to repeat Peter Drucker's quote here that you can't manage what you don't measure. Measurement is key. Again, this should be easy since you defined what your goals were at the beginning. Before we started implementing the solutions for intake, our team identified what our baseline values were. Then we identified what good looks like to us. Since our goals were to improve turnaround time by 90% and improve intake's accuracy rate by 9%, these became our metrics. Obviously, the metrics you will use will be custom to your problem. Some redirection was needed in terms of retraining the intake manager, which did eventually lead to the replacement of this manager. Also, intake's demand management method was changed from using an alpha methodology, which led to an inequitable displacement of work amongst team members, to a round-robin approach. So, what were the results of the intake team's improvement? Luckily, the team won back the key referral source by proving they could be consistent with their turnaround time. What worked for the location was identifying the several key team members who were taking breaks and lunches at the same time, which resulted in the sluggish customer turnaround time during high traffic times. So we rescheduled the breaks and lunches, which provided more balanced coverage for the team. We published weekly turnaround time metrics for the team by individual, which actually triggered healthy competition to be the best. We pulled ahead key specific tasks to increase turnaround time by 90% within 4 months. What didn't work as well as expected was following the intake process in sequence as it was trained. We determined that the sequential order elongated turnaround time and instead pulled key tasks to the front of the workflow to work in parallel with each other. We also realized that the accuracy metric that we originally created needed some tweaking to exclude non-realistic scenarios. And lastly, trying to ensure completeness of data elements from referral sources did not prove successful since it was unrealistic to expect our referral sources to cater to our needs, and instead we figured out how to flex to meet their needs. As you can see, it also created a schedule summary for this project. And as you can also see, we spent far more time on site during the discovery process since we needed a more in-depth understanding of the interactions between the staff, as well as their interactions with the customers. What was also different in this case versus the first case was that we implemented small incremental improvements weekly instead of implementing solutions during key milestone dates that lasted over multiple months. Okay, that completes our second case study, and now we're on to the last portion of our presentation today, which is the 1-minute to-do list. So shift your brains from thinking of being within a pharmacy and trying to solve problems, and think about ways of how do I improve and extend my own capacity and productivity and self-management skills. Several years ago, I picked up this book by Michael Linenberger in Barnes & Noble booksellers, and my 1-hour investment with a short read has greatly changed the way I manage my own priorities, my team's priorities, and daily email demand. Plus, it's easily adoptable, and 3 years later, I'm still using this method. So what makes the 1-minute to-do method work? If we were all in person for this session, I would ask how many of you read articles or books on how to improve your own productivity, only to realize the methods are cumbersome, unrealistic, theoretical, and in the end, impossible to adopt. I'm imagining at least half of you are raising your hands or at least nodding. And oftentimes we try to revert back to the basics, such as writing to-do lists on paper. This may have worked 50 years ago, but in our fast-paced world now, your to-do list will expire long before your workday is even done. Paper to-do lists don't work because there are too many tasks, and oftentimes you end up feeling like you're drowning in to-dos. Or you may find that you're spending way too much time revising your to-do list throughout the day due to shifts in urgency. Most people treat tasks as a first in, first out approach. That may work well with inventory management, but not for your own task management. Do you catch yourself feeling like you need to get to that week-old email because it's just sitting in your inbox, even if it's low priority? We tend to arbitrarily assign importance to the tasks that come our way, even if they aren't important to address now. Importance is subjective, but urgency is what matters. The 1-minute to-do list process focuses on urgency over importance by helping you organize your work into urgency zones. Urgency zones help you keep the most urgent tasks at the forefront of your purview, while the less urgent tasks stay out of the way. How many times do you catch yourself reviewing your to-do list throughout the day, only to feel anxious and overwhelmed by the volume of demand waiting on you? I know that happens to me all the time, and on any given day, I receive between 300 and 600 emails. So it's imperative that a method that I use works quickly, is easy to use, and actually proves results. This method will help you to reduce your daily stress and anxiety and helps to improve organization so you can feel confident you're spending your valuable time on the right work at the right time while minimizing distractions. The 1-minute to-do list process is simple. All you need is Microsoft Outlook in a computer or mobile device. Most of us nowadays, I think the statistic is about 99%, use Microsoft Outlook as a business email tool. The task manager should be turned on within Outlook. There's an optional app called Task that's available in your app store that you can use on your mobile device, which will allow you to review your Outlook tasks in terms of the urgency buckets, but it's not necessary to use tasks to be successful in improving your own productivity and getting the most out of this process. So now let's review what those urgency zones are and how to use them. The first urgency zone is called the critical now list. The critical now list should contain items that are absolutely due today. Today does not represent a due date that you assign to yourself, but should represent a date that someone external to you or your team assigned as a due date. This list should be reviewed hourly throughout the day and should take no more than 20 seconds to review. This list should also contain no more than 5 items at any given time. When you're thinking of assigning a task to the critical now urgency zone, such as reviewing an email and thinking about, well, when does this one need to get done? Ask yourself these questions to determine if it truly deserves the title of critical now. What's making me nervous today? What would impact me negatively if not completed today? Or who would I be letting down if I didn't get this item done today? Perform the going home test, which is, would I be willing to stay at my computer and work late tonight to get this item completed? If the answer is yes to any of those questions, then the item should indeed be labeled as a critical now item. And it's okay if you don't have any items that meet this criteria on any given day. All that means is that you have time to focus on your next urgency bucket, which is called the opportunity now list. The opportunity now list should contain items that could be due tomorrow up until 10 days from today. This list should be reviewed daily, such as first thing in the morning over your morning coffee or tea, and should take no more than 20 seconds to review. When you're thinking of assigning a task to the opportunity now urgency zone, ask yourself these questions to determine if it truly deserves the title of opportunity now. What would I work on if I had the opportunity? What tasks would I work on after my critical now tasks are complete? What would I do now if the right person walked by my desk or called my phone that would move a task forward? What items could suddenly mushroom in urgency or become due tomorrow? You want to move items from the opportunity now to the critical now list, or to a lower priority bucket called over the horizon if the urgency changes, which it will throughout the course of the day. Add a due date at the beginning of the task name, such as 6-11, status report due today. And adding this date helps you to identify items to pull up to your critical now list during your morning reviews. Use start dates and Outlook tasks to further prioritize within the opportunity now list. The last urgency zone is called the over the horizon list, and this is your lowest urgency bucket. And this should contain items that can wait 10 days or more to complete. This list should be reviewed weekly, such as first thing Monday morning, and should take no more than 20 seconds to review. There's no limit to the number of tasks that can sit within this list. When you're thinking of assigning a task to this urgency zone, ask yourself these questions. What's not troubling me right now? What doesn't feel urgent? What do I not want to lose sight of that may become urgent later and I want to stay on top of? Again, use a start date on the Outlook task in the future. Select a date of when you want to review it, not when you think it will be due. What happens when you use this method is that the task will not appear in your task manager list until the future date arrives, which is the date that you want to start reviewing it. This helps to keep the list clean. It minimizes the distractions for you, so that way you're not looking at tasks that you don't need to worry about right now. Select the start date as a Monday, so that way you'll see it appear in your task manager list at the start of your weekly reviews. All right, now on to a couple of tips and tricks that you may or may not know. So until I read this book, I had no idea how to properly use the search functionality in Microsoft Outlook. I would spend hours of time creating a folder structure to organize my emails, but found out that the folders were entirely unneeded with Outlook's search function. Now, I only have 2 folders, Inbox and Process Mail. To use the search function, anyone can click within the search bar. You'll notice a new search menu ribbon will appear called Search Tools at the top of your screen, with additional search functions where you can search by sender, category, subject, whether it has attachments, or even a combination of this criteria. So what do you do when you have a task with a specific due date and time? For instance, let's say that you're keeping some notes that you want to make sure that you review during a specific meeting. If that's the case, you can create an appointment with a specific date and time for when that task will appear. You can either create an appointment for yourself, or if you do have a task, you can push a reminder to yourself on a particular date and time. And you can do this on a task by opening up the task, clicking on the follow-up button, and then clicking on the set reminder option. This will set your reminder on both your desk and mobile versions of Outlook so you don't miss a beat. It will show up just like a meeting reminder shows up to you, which is that way that it's pushing the information to you. All information on this 1-minute to-do list process and content is all available within the references section. So now I'd like to just show you a quick little demo, taking a peek into my own personal life, into my Outlook email. As you can see in this right-hand side, this is where I have set up my task manager. I'm going to show you how to set up your own task manager, so that way you can categorize your items into the high, normal, and low buckets, which represent critical now, normal, and low categories for your urgency zones. So what you can do is first to make sure that your task manager is visible within your to-do bar. To do that, you want to click on your view menu and then click on the to-do bar and make sure that your tasks is checked. If it's not checked, just click on it, and then you'll see that it appears here. To get it to show up into these 3 different buckets, you have to do a couple of things. First, you'll need to right-click in this top area or even in this new task box and click on View Settings. You'll want to click on Reset Current View, so that way we start from scratch. Next up, you'll want to right-click again, and this time click on Importance. Once you do that, all of your tasks will list out in the way that you see here. If you see quite a lot of tasks already populated in your task manager, then they probably aren't real tasks. You may have flagged emails in the past that'll show up here, but they're not true tasks. And they have limitations, such as an inability to view these on mobile devices. Perform a one-time cleanup on any items that you see in your task manager by removing the flags, and you can do that by clicking on the flag to complete it, which will remove it from the taskbar. Even if a task is removed or completed, you can always go back to review all of your tasks by clicking on the task manager, which shows up as a check mark checklist icon, which may appear on the left-hand side of your screen or the bottom side of your screen. Completed tasks will show with lines through the task name. Okay, the great thing about having this toolbar is that it's always in your view. So for instance, your critical now list, which is your high priority list, which should contain no more than 5 items, should always be in your view. You should be reviewing this every hour, and by the end of the day, everything should be cleared out from what was there in the morning. The next set of tasks, which is your opportunity now urgency bucket, is within this normal area, and you should be reviewing this daily. And as you can see, I have a couple of tasks that have the date of the 12th. So when the 12th comes up, I'm actually going to move those into my critical now bucket. And then there's plenty that are in the low area, and more will be added to it throughout the weeks ahead. And again, that's okay. You'll want to just review that when you have, every Monday morning. It's a great idea to try to block off a portion of your morning in order to dedicate time to review. Okay. So we are at the end of our presentation. So by now, everybody should be familiar with how to uncover the root cause of an issue, how to create and use an action plan to organize and manage work tasks that support a larger goal, how to use project management methodology and tools to solve real-world problems that result in real value, and how to improve your own personal organization and productivity through the use of urgency zones. So as we wrap up, I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for staying with me throughout this virtual session for the NHIA Summer Series. It's not easy listening to an hour-long audio session and retain focus. I hope each of you was able to take away at least one key learning from today's session. And remember, leverage the references section to utilize templates of the tool that we reviewed today so that you can begin to implement immediately in your own day-to-day work.
Okay, thank you so much, Alyssa. We're going to get to some questions, but first I just want to say I've been writing feverishly notes on how to reorganize myself, and I'm putting that book in my Amazon cart by the end of today. So really excited to start working on some of those. So just a couple of questions we have from the group. So we have a question actually from a smaller provider who says they can't afford a project manager, and people don't have a lot of experience doing that. What advice do you have for smaller providers on getting started with this type of thought process?
That is a great question. My advice is, out of all of the techniques that you saw, use the action plan. Within the references section, you should be able to double click on the Excel template and use that template to start tracking your tasks. If you know that something needs to get done, put it in the Excel. You'll be able to assign it to somebody. It doesn't have to be a project manager to do the work. It should be somebody within your team with a start date and a due date. And then either it be yourself or someone else on the team should be responsible for reviewing that list daily or weekly and just simply following up with folks. But absolutely, you do not need to invest thousands of dollars into project managers or a formal project management office to glean some value from these skills.
Thank you. That's great advice. So we often talk about engagement of the team, but how do you engage and get buy-in from senior leadership to do this process? Seems like it takes a long time to get going where we're in a society of quick returns. How would you go about doing that?
Talk money. Time is money. Always get to the facts. So one thing that I've noticed in my career is that when you're trying to establish action from leadership, whether that be just your manager or the C-level suite, you need to speak in terms of facts. Do your homework, do your research to figure out if I want to make a change, why do I want to do it? What is the impact by not implementing the change? Are we losing money? Are we becoming inefficient? Are we not able to grow as much? So think about it in those terms and try to do some digging to see if you can get some numbers to support your case. But stick to the facts and try not to be subjective when you pitch it to senior leadership.
Sounds like a great idea. How about some ideas on how to keep a project management team engaged when there's failures in the process and there's a lot of rework that needs to be done?
That's a great question. Everyone handles disappointment or failure a little bit differently. What I suggest to my team, and when I was part of the project management office to my project managers, is that feedback is a gift. You will learn nothing unless you fail. Failure is the best teacher. And I know I'm throwing out a lot of those types of terms, but it is so true. If you're not able to fall down and get back up and learn from what didn't work in the past, you're not going to be experienced. If your entire professional career and projects were completely successful, you didn't know what made those successful. So think about it in those terms, because you really learn a lot more from failure than you do from success.
I totally agree. So one final question, in light of COVID, we're doing a lot of things remotely, and someone has a question about, they have multi-sites, and how's the best way to engage multi-sites and kind of change across the organization?
That's a great question. And, I came from Walgreens, where we had thousands of locations. I have now been working for Option Care Health for numerous years, where we have a lot of locations, not as much as Walgreens, but quite a few. And that is always a challenge, right? When you implement change, typically it's done, through webinar sessions, audio calls. Now in light of COVID, everyone's getting a little bit more familiar with how to do video calls. Video calls are great. It's definitely a lot more engaging, but you don't need to do video to get strong engagement from your sites. A few methods that we've used in the past is to send out a test or a quiz. You can do that through SurveyMonkey. There's even a function within Microsoft Outlook where you can send out, it's actually called like voting, but there's a function that you can use to send out a test or quiz, get the results back, and that creates accountability with these folks, where they owe you something. And if they owe you something, they're going to make sure that they do it. So whether it's training, follow up with questions, follow up with tests or surveys, that works really well. Creates a competitive atmosphere. So, some other methods that we've used in the past are raffles or, point systems or, whoever adopts this the best, that region's going to receive a pizza lunch or something like that. So, think about those types of remote ways that we can still try to motivate each other. Gaming is super fun and effective. And, again, accountability, following up with owing you a deliverable works really well as well.
Great information. Thank you again. That was our last question for today. So thank you again, Alyssa, for sharing your information. Such great to-dos coming out of it, not to play a pun on to-dos and tasks. So just a quick reminder, in order to get CE, please follow the link in the follow-up email to take a short quiz within 24 hours. It's worth repeating, take the short quiz within 24 hours. So just a couple more things. NHIF's Industry Trends Report is the industry defining report, is a guide to understand the home and specialty infusion market and outlines key metrics on how the industry has evolved over the last decade. This report, the first since 2010, connects 227 data points and tells the story of the industry. This new data provides valuable business intelligence with deep dives into industry current state. This is a must-have report for anyone in home infusion. Get more information and order online at NHIA's website. If you're looking for more great education, sign up for NHIA's member-only event tomorrow, CBIC updates, and DME-MAC COVID-19 information. On deck for the summer series is developing a comprehensive patient education program sponsored by NHIA member McKesson. Patient education is a key to patient success within home infusion. Join us as we hear Barb McElroy, Jean Stump, and Jennifer Ashner share their experience and knowledge on developing patient education. Finally, thank you to all of our providers and suppliers who are working on the front lines to keep patients safely in their home. We are looking forward to bringing you more education each week during NHIA's summer series. Enjoy the day.